Hey guys, this is Verneer for cardrunners.com bringing you the Building a Bankroll 2014. We're going to continue with under the gun play. Again, we're going to look at single raised pots. Now, what to open? So to kind of remind you of our opening range, all pocket pairs, all suited broadways, a couple of those stronger mid-suited connectors, some of the suited aces, or I should say all of the suited aces, and some strong offsuit broadways. So we want to adjust that based on aggressiveness and who is in the blind. So if the people that have position on you are aggressive, then you want to open fewer hands and you want to 4-bet more, and we'll talk about playing 3-bet pots later. If you have fish in the blinds, then you want to open a wider range. So the first set of cards I want to talk about are the high Broadway cards. So I'm going to lump both the suited and the offsuit ones. Obviously, we prefer to have them suited because we can double barrel more hands. So I have 11 hands here, and I'm going to start from the top and go down. Combination of winners and losers. So here's the very first hand. Ace King, definitely an open. Get 3 callers. As you can see, I've got one strong player who is in middle position, and then I've got 2 very fishy looking players, one on the button, one in the blinds. So I bet $7. I can probably bet, in fact, I probably should bet more here. I should probably bet something like 9. And I mean, I've noticed under betting has definitely been a theme in some of the hands that I've played. All right, the turn is a 6. So at this point, I'm putting him on some kind of an ace or a flush draw, maybe a straight draw. There's just lots of different hands that I can and should be getting value from. So I should bet again here, and I should bet something like $21. And I bet 16, and again, that's too little. He calls again, and the river's a 4, so the 4 is definitely a blank given the way this board ran out. So now I should put in maybe like a $39 value bet to try to get value from an ace. Way too little, and he ended up having ace 5. So I think I missed out on a lot of value by with my small bets here. So definitely a mistake on the way I played the hand. Ace Queen. Get a caller from a weaker player, 44-6. So he checks. I bet. He calls. The turn is an 8. So really not much help. He could have a lot of different draws here. If it was a 9, I would be a lot more concerned, but the 8 just doesn't concern me that much. So I'm going to keep betting. Bet 12 here. Again, I think I could go bigger. 3's a blank, so now I'm just going to try to get value from a worse queen, or maybe like a 9 or something like 10s or jacks. So I should bet like $32 here. Bet 25, and he calls me with the flopped straight. So definitely cooler in the way it came down, but I would like to just continue betting for value there. Actually on the river, let me see. Yeah, I think 25 is fine because I want to keep 9s in. I think a queen's going to call whatever, but I definitely want to make sure I keep some 9s in there as well. Ace Jack. Get called by really loose player on the button. So I'm going to be going for value here. Again, I should go bigger. Sound like a broken record. The 5 doesn't change anything. I should go, yeah, I think 15 is okay. Um, 18, 19 would have been better just because there's so many draws out there. He calls. Perfect river card. Yeah, all the draws miss. And now I'm just going to try to get value from a worse jack or 8. Or like 9s or so. Very similar ranges that some of the previous hands have been on. So, about like $38 here. 35 I think is okay, just because I don't see him as being that strong here. I could also maybe just try to go big. Bet like $50, close to pot, and see if he wants to bluff catch. So he ends up calling me with the second pair. So pretty big pot. I probably could have gotten more money out with the bet sizing, but I think bet sizing is one of those things that, in retrospect, it makes sense. But at the time, I'm just trying to get value from like a whole range. But still, on the flop on the turn, I definitely think I could have gone bigger on the flop on the turn. All right, so king queen, pretty safe flop for me. I end up continuation betting 6 and a 10, get raised. I have no idea what he's raising with here, but I'm just gonna start by calling. He really can't rep much. He can rep, I guess, a flush draw. Ace king, I guess. I don't know. But I just end up calling. And it goes check, check on the turn. And the river's a 9. I don't see much value in betting here. So I end up checking. I think my hand is fairly face up at this point. And he ends up betting like half the pot and end up calling. And he shows me the pocket 6s. So, I mean, I think there's times to bluff raise a flop like that. But I don't think 6s is a good hand to do it. I'm just not sure what you're going to be getting to fold unless it's like an ace queen or an ace jack that I decide to continuation bet. But I mean, even then, I don't know. Just 6s just seem to have pretty bad equity to be bluff raising that flop. So ace queen, get called by 2 players. One's a short stack, and one seems just like a really, really loose player playing 36-24. So I'm going to start by c-betting that. I think 6 is fine. Get raised by the short stack, and I'm just going to shove here for 50 big blinds or so. There's a lot of draws he can have. He could just be, I think his most likely hand is some kind of a flush draw. So I end up shoving, and he ends up showing a weaker queen. So this hand was just played strictly on stack sizes. If he has a set, he has a set. But I beat pretty much everything else. Ace queen. Get called by a regular. Bet. He calls. I'm putting him on queen. Maybe like 8s through... Well, maybe like 6s through jacks, some kind of a flush draw. So I should bet again for value here. 13 is fine. I could probably get bigger, 14, 15. The river's a 3, so all the draws miss. I think check calling here is pretty standard against some players, where you're basically trying to get a draw to stab at it. But it's also, I mean, people are pretty aware of the check call move on the river here. So I don't mind another value bet, like $34 or so, I think would have been good. But I end up checking, and he ends up betting like half pot and end up calling, and he's got king queen. So I think a river bet against a reasonably good player makes the most sense right there instead of a check. Two callers. Pretty bad flop. I decide to check it. I don't think there's a lot of value in, like, you're just going to get called a lot on this flop. So I do have the ace of clubs, and that's good. But against two players, I'm just going to check it. The turn is queen. So the player leads here, the nitty player, and I end up just calling. I think I can and probably should raise that turn. And the river's an ace, and he bets quite big. But with top two, I'm going to call there. He definitely could be value betting worse. Could be value betting like a queen jack or an ace jack. He could certainly have me beat too, but I think the river's just a call, and he ends up having the nuts. So turn, I like a raise when he leads there, but river I like just flatting. Top pair, top kicker with backdoor clubs. I bet and get raised by looks like a tag, almost getting closer to a nitty player. So flat, pretty straightforward. The turn is a queen, good card for us. I check, and he bets 14. I think just calling down makes the most sense here. That's a pretty small bet, kind of has me concerned. I flat again, and the river is a relative blank, unless he had 5-6 like a gut shot. So I'm just gonna check call again. I check. He bets quite big, and I'm just gonna end up check calling. And he shows the full house. So I think that's pretty straightforward. On the flop, once he raises, I think 3-betting is just poor. It folds out a lot of his bluffs, and both 3s and 7s are definitely in his range. So I think just calling it down makes the most sense. This is a pretty interesting hand. Ace queen raised, get called by a pretty loose player. Flop a gut shot with a backdoor flush draw and an overcard. So I bet, I get called, and I turned the straight. I bet again, and he calls again, and the river's a blank. So now I'm just going to go for value, try to get value from like a 2-pair type hand. It's probably his most likely holding. So I bet close to $30, which I like, and he ends up shoving, which is just really gross. So at this point, I don't think he's shoving a 2-pair type hand. So at this point, I think his most likely hand is a flush. I'm not even sure if this is the kind of player that would shove a weaker straight at this point. So really gross. I ended up just bet folding that river. My hand seems like a I mean, it looks like I could certainly have a set. I could have a flush. I could have a straight. So there's a lot of different hands. So when I'm showing just so much strength on 3 streets, and then he ends up shoving the river, I think he's going to have a flush just overwhelmingly often. So I end up folding. It feels really gross to fold there, but I think it was correct. Ace king. Get a call. I flop a flush draw, and I end up just betting it flush draw and 2 overs, and he ends up calling. I turn top pair. To go along with my flush draw, I bet again, and he calls again, and I river the second highest flush, so I'm just going to bet it for value. Bet kind of smallish, and I end up getting called by ace queen. So he had very similar hand to mine, just ended up being dominated. I don't mind the way he plays. I'd probably I might fold the river if I was in his shoes, just because both the king and the ace beats him, and I could certainly have both of those. Last hand, pretty interesting too. So a lot of these are straightforward. I'm just, you see, I'm just betting 3 streets for value or so. All right, ace king. I end up c-betting that, and he puts in the smallish raise. So in position with a gut shot, backdoor diamonds, and 2 overs, I'm certainly going to call. And I turn the nuts. He bets a fifth of the pot, and I raise him. And he ends up calling. So the river's a 10. When he check raised the flop, big part of his range was, I think, 3s and a hand like queen 10. I don't think he raises it with king queen. So he ended up shoving the river, and I ended up tanking and I ended up folding. Mostly because I feel like both in this hand and in the ace queen hand, my hand is just very face up, as being very strong. And I find that people tend not to like bluff shove into obvious strength, especially him being 21-15. So I think if he had a bear 10, I think he would check call that. I don't think he could have had a nut flush because I've got the ace blocker. So there's just a lot of hands that don't make sense for him to have. But like 3s totally make sense. Queen 10 totally makes sense. So I ended up folding and feeling gross about it. But again, I feel like both of the kind of hero folds I made on the river are correct. All right, so that's the broadways. One of the things that I mean, what makes these hands really powerful is that when you hit top pair, you'll often have you'll either have top kicker or second kicker, and you can go for multiple streets of value against dominated hands. They also flop flushes and straight draws, so just good hands in general to get value from. I'm going to show you my the graph that I have from these Broadway hands. I'm going to bring that over here. So pretty break even at showdown. At non-showdown, and winning at showdown. So it looks like I had a kind of a break even stretch here. But these should certainly be winners for everybody here. And I think in general the red line should be going up. I think as I mentioned, there's a lot of times where I missed out on some value by not betting enough. So that should just help me with both my lines, both the red line and the blue line. The next range of hands we're going to look at are the weaker suited hands. So their value comes from hitting like trips, straights, 2-pair type hands, and also being able to double barrel on a lot of flops. Unfortunately, more often than times they're going to miss, and when they do hit, they're going to hit like second pair, I would say, on average. So let's look at some of the hands. So King Jack suited, I would say I'm pretty much always opening that. So I flop a gut shot, checks. I'm going to be betting that flop since since I have trips here quite often. I get min raised with my gut shot and my backdoor clubs. I'm certainly calling a min raise, and a king could probably still be good. So on the turn, I turn my straight. I bet quite big, 14 into 1850, and he calls, and the river's a 4, and I bet quite big again, just because I don't think an ace is going to fold, and he ends up folding. So I don't know what he had. He might have had a hand like King 10, also looking for a gut shot, which turned 2-pair. But I definitely like my bet sizing on the turn in the river. So, oops, here we go. So here's the next hand. King 10 suited, definitely the bottom of my raising range, but I don't mind it. This is not a particularly a great table. All right, so I'll flop a gut shot and backdoor diamonds. So I'm definitely going to be betting that. And I turn the nuts. So in this spot, I think the villain is going to have a lot of 2-pair type hands. And here I'm also going to be giving up a lot. So I actually check with the intention of check raising. And he ends up folding. So I definitely prefer a check raise to a bet on this turn. Because I'm just going to be check folding so often, and he's going to have some piece of this very frequently. So check raising just gets the most value out of the hand. King 10 suited. Flop 2-pair. Top 2. Definitely betting that for value against a very loose player. I like it. Turn is a jack. So I bet quite big again, and he just bombs the turn. So in this spot, both Queen 9 and Ace Queen got there. King Jack is now ahead. Pocket 8s are still ahead. The only hand that I see him raising for value here that I'm not ahead of is Jack 10. But with so many other hands that are ahead of me, I think the turn is just a bet fold. I think if he has a hand like King Queen or like Jack with diamonds, I think he's just going to be calling very frequently. But when he's raising, I think he's raising for value. And I could certainly have Ace Queen and just be, double barreling that. So I think, again, as much as I don't like bet folding against this kind of a player, once I think about the hands that are ahead of me and the hands that would raise for value here on the turn, I just don't beat a lot of other hands here. So I end up just folding the turn. Ace 10 suited. So this is a flop that I'm going to be check folding frequently. So with the backdoor clubs and middle pair, I just decide to check call it. So I end up check calling the flop, and I'm going to end up check calling the turn, doesn't change anything. And the river completes both the straight and the flush. I end up checking, and he ends up checking it back, and he ended up having King 10. So I think on the river I would end up check folding. I don't beat anything on the river that he would bet for value. So I ended up taking this pot down. Queen Jack suited. I turn backdoor straight and flush draws along with my 2 overs. So I'm going to bet this with the intention of double barreling a lot of cards. That's certainly a good enough card for me to double barrel. I think I should bet bigger here. I don't like the bet sizing. I should go like 12-ish. He calls again. And the river, it doesn't really change anything. The 4 is actually a pretty good card for me. So I should probably bet again for value, like 18 or so. Try to get value out of a 10 or like stubborn pocket 9s or something like that. But he ends up betting 6 and ended up check calling. And he had 4-3. So I don't know if he was calling because of the small bet sizing, but in general, I don't like his call on the turn. The flop, pre-flop, I don't like it. Let's look at the next hand. Jack 10 suited. I would say I would almost always open that from under the gun. So I flop a open-ender with backdoor diamonds. I bet and get called. And the turn is an 8. So I have the nuts with a redraw to a flush. So again, this is a spot where I would often check fold it. So I end up checking. The guy ends up betting 8, and I make it 28, and he just ends up folding. So I think a check raise on that turn is a stronger move. Queen 10 suited. It's kind of a meh hand. I'm actually not sure if I'm winning or losing, or this is a winning or losing hand for me in the long run. So 2 players call, really strong flop for me. Get raised, then a shove. Obviously I'm going to reshove, and the player ends up calling. And I miss everything, and frustratingly enough, he wins with king high there, and the other player wins with a set of 7s. So really frustrating way of losing a pretty big pot, but I mean there's no other way to play that. So 7-8. Say most of the time this is probably going to be a fold, but good flop from me to bet with some backdoor equity. So I end up betting and get called, and I should double barrel that. I end up checking, I guess with the intention of check raising, hoping he bets an ace himself. So he checks back and the river's a 4, so now I'm just going to bet for value. So I overbet it and he ends up folding. It's actually not a bad spot to overbet the river, just because it's difficult for him to put me on anything. But I think, yeah, I think a turn check raise here is a reasonable play. Although I think in general I'm going to be better off double barreling, just given the way we've played some of the high aces beforehand. Good flop to bet with some double barrel equity. Spades, queens, 9s, aces give us additional equity. So start by betting. He calls. We turn our one of the cards we can double barrel. So I want to go bigger here. I would like to see myself go bigger here. And on the river, I end up betting 18. I don't really like it. I don't see him folding much. He ends up folding here. Yeah, I'm just not really crazy about that bet. I think if he has a hand like 9s on 10s or jacks, he might end up calling, but I've got some of the blockers to that, and it's reasonable that he could have a 7 himself, like a 6-7 or a 5-7. So I don't like that bluff on the river, even though it ended up working. 9-10 suited, again, kind of a questionable open, but I think it's okay in some spots. This is a flop that I'm sometimes just going to be check folding, so I end up check with the intention of check calling with my backdoor diamonds and second pair. Pretty good turn for me. I'm going to check call that again. And pretty bad river, and I'm just going to end up check folding that river. So I think in general I'm going to be check folding that river frequently regardless. So you know, if he wants to double barrel, if he wants to triple barrel bluff me, that's fine. As you'll, or I don't know if I've shown this spot, but this is a spot where I will check call like aces or kings and such, and then check call 3 streets. King jack, definitely an open from under the gun. I flop the nuts, a bet. I get raised. At this point I'm going to re-raise, just because if he has a set, I don't want a turn card to kill the action. If he has a flush, I don't want a turn card to kill the action. So I kind of almost click it back. He ends up shoving in, I end up calling, and he ended up, I don't even know what happened there, but I'll take it. 7-8 suited. I flop a gut shot and backdoor clubs, but against 3 players on this flop, I should not be betting that. And so I turn a straight. I like the small raise on the turn to get value from 2 pairs, etc. He calls, the river's an ace. He checks. I should bet for value there. I should bet like $20 to get value from 2 pair, etc. Yeah, so I don't even know what I was thinking there by not betting for value. I think the river's a bet fold, but I think it's definitely a bet. So this is a pretty poorly played hand on my part. Ace 10 suited. I flop. As in a lot of cases here, there's just a lot of backdoor equity that you're going to be flopping. So I flop backdoor straight and flush, and I've got some overs. So I like a bet. The player calls. The turn is an ace. Hits one of my outs. I'm going to bet again. Could probably go bigger. He ends up calling again, and the river is an 8. So now I want to bet smaller. I see. I should be betting that river here. Get value from a jack, but I should be betting smaller. I don't think he calls me twice with an 8. So his most likely hand is some kind of a jack. But I should bet like 24 bucks there and fold if he. Yeah. Anyhow, it's just a bet. So ace 10 suited. Flopping backdoor equity. Bet. He calls. Turn is a jack. Good card for me. I'm going to keep betting. I've got an open-ender with a flush draw. And he min-raises me. I think calling's the only correct play here, and I'm going to lead if I hit. I miss. I check. He makes it 36, and I just end up folding. So bet the flop, bet the turn. Once he min-raises, call and go from there. Queen jack suited. Top pair. I just end up calling the flop since there's a player left to act. And my kicker is really not that great. I can raise to isolate here, especially against the weaker player. So really safe card for me. He bets. I should be raising here just as a blocker. So I should make it like 22 or something. The river's a 3 and he bets small and I end up calling. But I think the turn I should raise as a blocker. In this case, I would have ended up losing more, but against this player, there's just so many different things he could be leading on the flop and then leading again on the turn. Let's see how much he bet sized the turn. Yeah, that's like that should be like an automatic raise with my hand versus his range, given that he's 42-31. 9-8 suited. Flop backdoor equity, which seems to be the theme for all these. Plus a pretty good flop for me to just bet. Turn my equity. Bet again. I like betting again there. And I river. And I end up betting 28. And he ends up calling me with ace 10. So bet. How much did I bet on the river? 28 into 40. I might even bet bigger there just because I don't think an ace is going to be folding. He certainly would have called a pretty big bet with his 2 pair there. So pretty straightforward. As you can see, the theme for most of these is you pick up a lot of equity on the turn. So there's a lot of hands I didn't show where I don't flop any kind of turn equity. So let me see. Okay, so like this is just, if that 2 is not a spade, then I'm probably not going to continuation bet that. So that's one of the subtle differences when you have a hand like ace 10 suited. A board of jack of clubs, 2 of spades, 8 of hearts could be a board that you see bet, but jack of clubs, 2 of diamonds, 8 of hearts is one that you end up just passing against these 2 players. So with a lot of these, with this kind of a range, you're really looking for flops where you can double barrel multiple cards. So you've got some kind of, let me go back to this hand. So here, a 9, a king, a queen, or any spade gives me additional cards to barrel ahead. So I want to be thinking about what can I barrel on the turn, so that I can, just so that I can increase my equity. I didn't really show any triple barrel bluffs, but I mean, if the board is correct, that's something you can do as well. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know, and we will pick up with some more under the gun play in the next video. Until next time, for cardrunners.com, this has been Verneer. Good luck at the tables, guys.